really excited and stoked to have an awesome guest here today in the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy and America's Facebook Live series, astronaut Mike Massimino. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming. Dying to get you on the show. You are just such a tremendous talent. I'm going to be co-hosting tonight with Clarissa Burt, the amazing, talented, great Clarissa. Thank you, Clarissa, for being here. And Justin will be moderating. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment section and we can ask Mike those questions. Because listen, I was going through his credentials. It's ridiculous. Astronaut, professor, engineer, author, speaker, all over the country, media analyst, TV shows, movies, born in Oceanside, New York. So Mike, you've done it all. You've also written some books, and one of those kids' books that's been translated, I guess, into a series that would be for younger children is A True Story of a Young Boy's Journey to Becoming an Astronaut. So Mike, tell us, how did you get into that space?
To become well, thanks very much for having me, Bob and Clarissa and Justin, and it's a pleasure. You said I was born in Oceanside. I was, but that was only where the delivery was made. I think that was the only hospital, about South Shore Hospital, I think it's the name of it. But I grew up in Franklin Square, and my parents were members of the Sons of Italy in Franklin Square, and I've always been a very proud Italian American person, growing up in my neighborhood, and brought that with me to space as well. So throughout my life and career. But how I got into it, originally I was 6 years old when they landed on the moon. And that really caught my attention and made me want to grow up to be like Neil Armstrong. And then as I got older, I figured there's no way I'm becoming Neil Armstrong. I was afraid of heights. I still am afraid of heights. Yes, that can cause problems for astronauts when you're afraid, but you know, we all have our issues. But I just didn't see myself growing up to be a fearless test pilot. But when I got to college, and toward the end of college, I went and saw a movie called The Right Stuff, and it was about the original 7 astronauts and test pilots. And I started looking into what was going on in the space program at that time a little more, which was the space shuttle program. And it changed from when I was a kid. It wasn't just military test pilots. It was scientists and engineers. There still was a lot of military people, and happy Veterans Day to everyone out there. This is an important day. Thank you for everyone for their service and the families who supported our veterans. But I wasn't, I wasn't a military person, but a lot of civilians were being selected as astronauts with the shuttle program. So that started that rekindled the dream for me. And I went to grad school and started applying to NASA, got rejected 3 times, including a medical disqualification along the way that I had to get overturned. And then I got selected in 1996 on my 4th try.
Yeah, just real quick before we get to Clarissa, I just wanted to ask you, you went to Columbia, you went to MIT, academic institutions. So at being a civilian, it's got to be a really competitive position to get. And I'm sure they vet both psychologically, emotionally, and physically. Tell us how rigorous those credentials were for somebody to become an astronaut. How hard is it?
I think the hardest thing, Bob, about being an astronaut is becoming one. After you get in, it's not so bad. It's reasonable, but it is crazy. It is, and that's what I realized right from the start, that my chances were low. There were thousands of qualified, but it's like 7,000 qualified people, and they're going to pick a handful. The year I was selected was a fairly large class. It's 35 Americans were picked. But again, 35 Americans out of 6,000 to 7,000 qualified people. Like, you look into those applications, how does that happen? And then, getting to the interview and just going through that interview process with there's other people with you as you're going through that process, and you realize this is a pretty good group of people. But just like anything, and they're looking at everything. They're looking at, it's not always who's the smartest person in life, right? And so they're looking for people who are bright, who can learn and be trainable. But more, once you get to a certain level of it, it's more of, at the end, it's really like, who is this person? Are they a good team player? Because that is really important. It doesn't, you have to be able to do the job, but lots of people can do that. It's more of how would you fit in? Is this a person I can trust? And is this a person I can work with? That's the kind of, because I've seen it on both ends. I was wanting to be an astronaut, then I help pick them. After you become one, you get involved with the selection. And you're looking at it at that point, like, who really is this person? Is this a person that when the chips are down that I can rely on, that will hang in there and not throw, you're not going to throw the other person under the bus, that you're going to win and lose as a team. And that's what it's about. And that's the thing that we're looking for. That's maybe a little bit different. The other stuff, you know, the health part of it, the physical fitness part of that's important, of course. They also do a big, you know, you say they vet, they really vet. They do a pretty extensive background check on you too, where they ask people from your past about you. They try to get to know who you are from all aspects of it, and before they're going to give you this great opportunity. But what I kept in mind, Bob, through all of this was that my chances might be low, you know, like 1 out of a million, let's say, but my chances would be 0 if I didn't try.
Yeah.
And as long as you try, it's a, you know, it's a non-zero possibility. It might be small, but the outcome is still possible for success. And that's what I try to remember. And I tell people that no matter what it is, if you don't try, or if you give up, you know what the outcome is going to be. It's going to be 0. So that's what I kept in mind. And I did my best, and I made up my mind that I was just going to keep trying no matter what. And on the 4th try, it worked out.
Awesome. Clarissa, any questions?
Go back to academically speaking for just a second, Mike. I mean, first of all, to become an astronaut, you have to be a United States citizen, and then we'll talk about what's happening this Saturday.
For the U.S. program. But we have my friend Soichi. My friend Soichi was a Japanese astronaut who's flying on Saturdays in my astronaut class. I just went back and forth. I went back and forth. We made him an honorary New Yorker.
All
but
right.
Soichi, I just was going back and forth with him on email today, and he's a jet. So that each different countries have their own program. We're talking about the American program, but yes,
exactly.
the NASA program, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, you have to have an awful lot of degrees, from engineering to biological, physical, science, computer science, mathematics degrees, and all kinds of things. So you have to be pretty.
Only one category. You don't need all of them, you know, but you gotta have something. Yeah, you gotta study one of those things, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to ask you this. First of all, as I said, I did my research, and I wanted to go back and show everybody this. So here he is, all suited up, everybody. And what I wanted to know from you is, it looks like you were awfully happy to get off of this planet for a while. And I was wondering, that's a big darn smile right there, Mike. What was it
that's about 20 years old. I think that was right after I got assigned to my first flight. We took that photo. I was going to be a spacewalker on my first space flight.
Right.
And that was, they took that picture right around about 20 years ago. So
that's a great picture.
I was going to say what happened to your hair. This is what happened.
I know.
Radiation exposure in space, I think, did it to me. Yeah, that's a more recent photo from.
Here's the cover. I know.
That's about,
a little bit of a color change.
4 years old.
Here. We got it. First of all, it says spaceman. It says an astronaut's unlikely journey to unlock the secrets of the universe. So first of all, I would like to know why unlikely. And secondly, what are the secrets of the universe? Can we talk about them in half an hour? Are there that many?
Yeah, so, all right. So why was it unlikely? I added the word unlikely to the subtitle. Titles are interesting in writing books.
Yep.
Like, I think the title, I don't know if I think I was allowed to write anything I wanted in the book. But I think the publisher was like responsible for the title. I had input in it.
Right.
But they came up with Spaceman, and then the rest of it, the Unlocking the Secrets of the Universe, that's, I think, more of a reference to Hubble, the Hubble Space Telescope. So I was an engineer, and when we would have our press conferences, luckily we had an astronomer on both of my flights. His name was John Grunsfeld, a very good friend of mine, PhD in astronomy. So whenever we'd get a tough astronomy question, we would just turn it over to John. He would answer what was going on. For me, if I was on my own and they would ask me, what does Hubble do? And I would say, it unlocks the secrets of the universe. So it came from that, that was kind of what I categorized what the telescope did. And that's pretty good, I think.
But why?
So that's where that part of it came from. The unlikely part, I kind of threw that in there because the way things work, just as we were talking about before, the chances of becoming an astronaut to begin with are low. I never really thought of myself as someone who would be what you would consider to be the typical astronaut, the cool test pilot. That wasn't me. I enjoyed flying and all that stuff. But I just didn't picture myself as that. And the whole thing in general is unlikely to realize that dream that I had as a little kid. So that's where unlikely came from. And yeah, that's where that title came from.
I think we got some questions from the national office there in Washington, Justin.
Absolutely. So Carolyn Rears, who is our Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America national historian, and she's also a former teacher of yours.
She is. Yeah.
And so she left us two questions to ask you. And the first one is,
Are they math questions?
they're not math
I was told
questions.
there'll be no math.
There's
She
no
was my
math
math
questions.
teacher in 10th grade. Yeah, yeah.
And
All right, go ahead.
a fellow Franklin Square resident.
Yes, great teacher at Cary High School. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Carolyn was wondering what was going through your mind when you stepped onto the spacecraft for that first flight?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had, yeah, as we said, I was a civilian. I had never been in the military. And again, thank you for the Veterans on Veterans Day. But I had never been in combat or anything like that. And it was a strange feeling leading up to the launch day that you know that day is coming, and you're very excited about it. But it's also a bit intimidating because typically those days are either good days or bad days, and you know that it could be a bad day. That's always a possibility. Something bad could happen that day. And but I was still very excited, you know, and I was like, oh, it's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. But we get out to the launch pad, that first launch, and it was a early morning launch right before dawn. We lifted off like 6:30 a.m. or something like that. That meant we had to get out to the launch pad, maybe even earlier than that. But we had to get out to the launch pad about 2 or 3 in the morning. It was in the middle of the night when we got out there. So it was pitch black.
Wow.
And the whole area was cleared because they put fuel in the tank for the space shuttle, and then they clear the area. So it's kind of deserted except a few technicians. And it was all lit up brightly. There was no support structure around it anymore for servicing it. So it looked like a spaceship ready to go. And it was water vapor coming off the top from the cryogenic fuel, but it looked like smoke, and it was making these really strange noises, just bending of cold metal. And it looked like it was alive. It looked like a beast.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all these years of dreaming about it. But you know, like a lot of things, what I found was that thinking about something is usually a lot worse than actually doing that. If that happened to you, I remember like even taking a test as a kid, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But you get in there and, you know, it's not as bad as you think because you're somewhat ready. You don't think you're ready, but when I saw that, it was pretty intimidating. But once I actually got inside the spaceship, I felt at home.
Yeah.
And so it was intimidating for me and a bit scary before the launch, looking at that spaceship, like, oh my gosh, they're serious about this. And then when it, you know, like, oh my, you know, we're really going to do this. But once I got inside, I was okay. We had stuff to do. We had a job to do, and it all felt, we were so well trained. The government trains you so well to do these things. NASA did, the military does, to do these types of jobs, that something you could say, I could never do that. It's because you're not trained to do it. Once you get trained, you realize, no, it's something that's reasonable. People can do these sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the second question is a little lighter. Carolyn says that if her memory serves her correct, you were a Mets fan, a diehard Mets fan.
Yes.
And she was wondering if you ever were able to kind of pay homage or tribute to your favorite team while you were in space.
I did. I did a couple things. My first flight, I flew a jersey for the Mets. Actually, it was John Franco, who I've become friends with as a result of this over the years. But John Franco was a pitcher for the Mets and was their team captain. And his father was a New York City employee. He worked for the sanitation department. And so they asked me, what player's jersey do you want? I said, well, I'd like to fly John Franco's. So I flew John Franco's jersey in space. And that was, I did that on my first flight. My second flight, I took a home plate from Shea Stadium. So my second flight was in 2009. We thought it was going to be in 2008. We got delayed. This is what happens. But we thought we were going to fly in 2008. So I set it up with the Mets what happened was there was another friend of mine who was a Yankees fan named Garrett Reisman. And for your baseball, we're getting into a baseball discussion, but it's too late. So both Yankee Stadium and Shea Stadium, where the Mets played, were torn down and new stadiums were built for the 2009 season. So both of these stadiums are being wrecked during the 07, 08. I think they were actually that big. They were going to be wrecked after they built the new stadium. So I think 08 was like the last season in Shea Stadium and his last season in the old Yankee Stadium. So anyway, a friend of mine was going to fly dirt from the pitcher's mound in Yankee Stadium on a flight before mine. He was going to fly it in space. So I call up Jay Horwitz from the Mets. I go, Jay, you hear about this guy that's going to fly dirt in space from Yankee Stadium? He goes, yeah, Mike, we can do better than dirt. And they sent me a home plate to fly in space. So I flew. There's even a longer story, but I'll leave it at that. But I flew a Shea Stadium home plate for the Mets in space, and I've got to throw out a bunch of first pitches for them, and it's been a pretty fun experience being a Met fan and being able to combine it with space travel. So they have a new owner now, so I'm excited about that too.
That's crazy.
Hey, Mike, let me ask you a question. I'm curious. What was something that you did not expect that occurred on your flights? I have so many questions. The second is, what emotional or spiritual, if you will, takeaway did you come away from all this? And was there a difference between your first flight and your second flight in terms of your nervousness or any fears or concerns you had?
Okay. All right. So I think there was like 3 or 4 questions there. And what was the first one? I forget. I can't remember the first one.
Well, tell us, what was something that you didn't expect?
I didn't expect, right? Okay. I think, for me, I thought it was going to be an amazing experience, something I dreamt about, but it was overwhelming to be there. It was so magical. And the beauty of our planet is what I had heard about, how beautiful it was, but when you see it, especially from a spacewalk. So I was very much concerned about my job on fixing the Hubble Space Telescope, this great scientific instrument, and not messing that up. And I was the first true rookie who had ever gotten a chance to spacewalk on the telescope. This is by the time I flew was the 4th mission. And so I was a bit of an experiment. I didn't want to let people down. So I was really concentrating on that part of it. But the view of our planet, and especially from where we were at Hubble's 100 miles higher than where the space station flies, for example. So at that higher altitude, you see the curve of the planet, and it's just unbelievable. And the thought I had in my mind when I had a chance just to look at it was, this must be the view from heaven. It was during a spacewalk it was my second spacewalk. So the first one I didn't look around very much, but the second time I had a little more time to look around, and I said, this would be the view from heaven. And I thought, no, it's more beautiful than that. This is what heaven must look like. I felt like I was looking through an absolute paradise. Wow. And I could see that, and then the beauty of it, and also the fragility of it. I realized I'm wearing a spacesuit. I'm only a few hundred miles up. I can't live outside of there's my spacesuit, and how protective it is, and how important it is to keep it as protected as we can. Take care of it. And I also can turn the other way. You can see the blackness of space there. It's just magnificent. But, I looked around. We have no other options. We got nowhere else to go. We got to stay going. We got to keep our planet working. So I think the sheer beauty of the planet and that emotional thing, which I think was maybe your last question, I'll answer that a little bit differently. But it all comes into it of just how beautiful our planet is. All right. Your second question was?
Yeah, the second question is, was there a difference between your first flight and your second flight in terms of how you felt? Did you feel more comfortable, relaxed? And by the way, do they train you if you get nervous or anything? It's a training like that. Like, I'd imagine that some people get up there and, there could be an issue with whether or not they're just, excuse the expression, freak out.
Yeah, that sounds like another question. Let me go to the other one first. So the other thing was these are all great questions.
I told you I got a lot.
Okay, so let's go. So the next thing was like the difference between the first and the second flight.
I'll see you guys later.
Okay, the first and the second flight. So the first flight, everything was all new to me, and I was the rookie, and it almost went by in a blur. Like, it was great, but I got back because I want to go again. And I was looking forward, I think, to my second flight more than my first, because I knew a little bit more to expect. I was much more comfortable. I had much more fun. I bonded with my crew more. I think I made more of an attempt to really appreciate it. And I think some of that was because in between my first and second flight was an accident. And I flew on Space Shuttle Columbia on that first flight. We lost my first flight. It was now Columbia's first flight, but on Columbia's next flight, we lost Columbia and the crew. If you remember, it was STS-107. They didn't come back. And that was a lot different. That really changed our program. And the mission to Hubble was canceled. And I was hoping to get assigned to was canceled. It was deemed too dangerous because we were now going to inspect the vehicle. And if we couldn't come back, we would try to fix it. And if you couldn't fix it, you were going to stay on space station. but we weren't going to space station. We couldn't get to space station from Hubble's orbit. So we were stuck, and they actually canceled the mission. We were able to get it back on the books by having a rescue flight ready to go. So it had this different sense to it. It was after the accident. It was the last time we were going to fly to Hubble. It was the end of the shuttle program. But at the same time, I knew it was an extraordinary opportunity. So I enjoyed that second flight a lot more. I think it was probably more nerve-wracking on everybody else, like my family and everyone else, because it was a very dangerous flight. But it was, for me, it was beyond any opportunity I ever thought I would ever have. And I was so grateful to get that chance. I mean, I remember one of the moonwalkers, Alan Bean, said that what everyone wants in life is to do something great. That's what everybody wants. I remember he told us as new astronauts, he said, all of you are going to have that opportunity, make the most of it. And I felt like I was given that opportunity and I wanted to make the most of it. So that was that. The other thing about being trained, being the scared stuff being taken out of you, it's strange, Bob. I never knew how I would react under situations where I would be in a situation where it was, life-threatening or whatever you want to say. And a couple of those came my way, both in training and in space. And what was interesting about it was I realized that this is no time to be scared, and there's no time to be nervous. That's not going to help. And it was a situation, my last spacewalk, I had made a critical error on repairing the telescope. We were able to overcome that error with a solution from the ground. But I was going to have to do things that, in order to fix this, I was going to do things in my spacesuit that I felt a little nervous about. And I was also going to have to, we're going to have to rework the whole thing. It wasn't a pleasant situation. It was a little bit scary for me. But I remember saying to myself, being scared right now is not going to help you. Being nervous right now is not going to help you. Being upset is not going to help you. Block it. And I just got rid of all that stuff and just concentrated on what I was doing. And I never thought I would react that way. And it happened to me a couple of times in my training too, where maybe an emergency situation in the airplane or other things that happen where it's like, whoa, this is, I never been in those situations before. And I wasn't sure how I'd react. I don't know if they trained us to do that, but the realization I had was none of that stuff is going to help. I need to concentrate on doing my job to get through this. And that's what happened. I never thought I would react that way, but that's kind of what happened when I found myself in those situations.
All right, Mike, I'm going to triple stack my questions too, or I might not get you. I have 3 real quick ones. I understand that you were the first person to tweet from space, so I want to know what it said and who it was to. Apparently, I read that the aging process slows when you're up there a little bit, so that was very
not enough, obviously, but yeah, I don't know about that one.
That was intriguing to me, and it says something about your team. You guys won records for spacewalking in time.
Yeah, so the aging process, I don't know about it. It might be related to being the further away you are from the center of the planet, the slower time occurs, but it's not that much. I don't even know if we're talking a millisecond after
spending. I should book a flight or something.
No, that's not working. No, I wouldn't worry about that part. You're going to have to get really far away.
Okay.
So that's not going to work. Yeah, no. So don't count on that. It will keep you young at heart, though. I'll tell you that much. You remain a kid for a long time when you're an astronaut.
Awesome.
The other one, you had the Twitter thing. I'll answer last because that's the longest answer. What was the other thing?
You guys won an award. You won.
That was a record we sent. Yeah, we set a record for the amount of time. We had 5 spacewalks in 5 days on both of my missions, and we set a record on my first mission, and we broke it on my second mission for most spacewalking time in a single shuttle mission. So, yeah, we were out there. We didn't get paid any overtime, but we were out there we had some long spacewalks. But if you add up as a team, I'm really proud of that record because it was something that we really worked hard at, and we had things go wrong, and we got everything done. And it was really a team effort, not just for our spacewalking team or even our mission team, but for the entire NASA team that supported us around the country. Yeah. And then the Twitter thing was interesting. So there's a Neil Armstrong. We were talking about Neil Armstrong before the show. When I first met Neil Armstrong as a new astronaut, I asked him how he came. You know what he said on the moon, right? Everyone knows. Can someone tell me out of the 3 of you?
One small step for man and one giant leap for mankind.
Right. Perfect. I remember hearing that as a little kid saying, wow, that's pretty good, right? That was a very famous, that was a very famous thing. So when I first met Neil Armstrong, I was actually on a lunch line, believe it or not. He was in town. He was in town for a meeting, for a reunion. And we were on I go, look, Neil, I introduced myself to him. I said, I hope I don't bother you, but I got to ask you, how'd you come up with that? Did you ask your wife? Did you get a publicist? Who came up with that? And he looks at me and he goes, Mike, I didn't think about what I was going to say until after I got on the moon. I was like, really? He said, Mike, if I didn't land on the moon, there'd be no reason to say anything, right? And he could tell I was kind of like a new young astronaut, and he gave me some guidance. And he said, look, Mike, you're new at this business, but in this business, you got to put your job first and worry about all that other stuff. All that publicity comes after. Can't think about that until after. All right. You got to put your job first. And he goes, you got it? And I said, you're my all-time greatest hero. I got it. And I remember that. So it came out that, that Twitter was getting popular. I wasn't really paying attention because I was busy training for the flight. But right around like April of 2009, we flew in May. NASA Public Affairs says, there's this thing called Twitter, and we'd like you to be the first guy to tweet from space. We think you'd be the right guy for that. Your commander says it's okay. And I was like, okay. So, and so I was going to do this first tweet, and I started tweeting on the ground. But the press asked me. The press said, what's going to be your first tweet? What are you going to tweet? And I said, I'm not worrying about it. Neil Armstrong, I didn't say Neil Armstrong, but I remember Neil Armstrong told me, I go, we got to get to orbit first. If we don't do our job, I'm not going to have to tweet anything. So I'm concentrating on getting to space. I'll worry about what I'm going to tweet after I get there. So we get to space and we open up the computer, just like the one I have in front of me right now.
Right.
And I got the Twitter thing going. I'm going to write the tweet. And I realized that advice I got from Neil Armstrong was like the worst advice I ever got in my life. I'm floating, and I started doubting my hero. I was like, I'm just floating around up in space in zero gravity. This guy's on the moon and he comes up with that. So he had to think about it ahead of time. So all I said, launch was awesome. An adventure of a lifetime has begun. And I sent it down and kept working. And as a result of this, they made fun of me on Saturday Night Live. On Saturday Night Live, that next Saturday, he said, we have our first tweet from space. And here it is. And it's Mike Massimino. It said, launch was awesome. And it was Seth Meyers doing Weekend Update. And he goes on to say, in 40 years, we've gone from one giant leap for mankind to launch was awesome. If we ever discover life in the universe, this is how we'll hear about it from this guy. And it shows my little Twitter thing. It's like, geez, dude, aliens. So I got made fun of on Saturday Night Live as a result of this tweet. So that is the long story. There's more to the story, but I think we're out of time.
All right, well,
So we're out of time, but that's part of the story of the first tweet from space.
Justin's got some questions for
Well,
you.
absolutely. I know we're getting short on time, and there are some great questions coming in, and a lot of them, and a lot of comments as well, Mike, about how much of a hero you are for not only Italian Americans nationwide, but New Yorkers and Long Islanders, and how proud everyone is of you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. But Debbie Liberia wrote in a question that I think kind of sums up some other questions that were written in, and it's a short one. What advice do you have for anyone that's a young person aspiring to be an astronaut or go to space or be involved in that world?
Yeah, I would encourage you. I think it's a lot of exciting things. For me, it was the way I saw it was, let me go to NASA and become an astronaut and do that. Now there's private companies doing all kinds of things. One of my friends, I just was texting with him today about it. His name is Mike Lopez Alegria. He's going to be like the first commercial commander of a crew going to the space station with his company. So there's lots of ways to get to space now with what SpaceX has been doing and so on. And there's Blue Origin and there's Virgin Galactic, and there's still NASA. They're building the Space Launch System, which is going to go back to the moon and hopefully onto Mars. And there's so many things going on. So there's lots of exciting opportunities. What I would suggest, no matter what it is that you're interested in doing, is do what you like. Follow your passion for what you're interested in. Don't worry so much about what the outcome is going to be. Just concentrate on what it is you like. When I was a student at Cary High School, and Carolyn Rears, who you mentioned was my math teacher, I liked math. And when I was in 11th grade, I took physics, and I liked that stuff. And I thought when I go to college, I want to take that stuff. And I found out that I could study that with engineering. and I took the classes I thought were interesting, that I didn't worry so much about what job I was going to get. I just took the classes that I thought were interesting, the major I thought was interesting. And then I went to grad school and again pursued things I was interested in. I was interested in human machine robotic interaction on planets. And that's what I got into. And that led me to becoming an astronaut. And the way you can simplify that whole thing, like, what do I do to become an astronaut? Because you can do lots of things. You can join the military, become a pilot. You know, I've flown in space with military test pilots, with engineers, with astronomers, but I've also flown in space with a geologist. Drew Feustel was a field geologist because he liked rocks. And how did you become? But it's a science, and so that makes you qualified to go with NASA. I also flew in space with an oceanographer, Megan McArthur, who's flying again. She's going to go up in space again in April on a SpaceX launch for NASA. And I also flew in space with a veterinarian, Rick Linehan, a veterinarian. He loved animals as a kid. He wanted to become a veterinarian. He also wanted to be an astronaut, but what he wanted to study in school was veterinary science. That's what he did. He was delivering a baby dolphin when he got the call from NASA that he was going to be an astronaut. He said, "Hold the call, I'm delivering a baby dolphin," because he loved dolphins. That's what he did. He worked with animals. So I think the point of all that is, no matter what it is, whatever career you're thinking about or what you want to do, find out what you like in school, do your best at it, the best that you can do. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Just do the best you can and don't give up, and just keep trying. And I think that leads you to a good outcome. Do what you love, and
Mike, if they
that'll
asked
lead
you,
you to the
would
right
you go
place.
back?
What's that?
If they asked you, would you go back?
If they asked me, would I go back? Yeah, I'd go. I mean, I would go back. I don't know if I'm ready to go back into the NASA program, and that was something that I think that's in my past. I'm on to a different phase of life now. But the experience, I'd love to go back as a tourist, so I can complain about the service. That's what I really want to do. I want to go, hey, where's my cold drink? That kind of thing. But I would love to go back someday and take another look at the planet. But I'm very happy for the opportunities I had, and I'm glad I got a chance to do what I could do. But the opportunity to go back, I think sure that would be great if that could happen. But again, it's probably going to be as a tourist for me.
Got it.
Justin, do we have any more questions before we wrap up?
I think that's it from the. I think we could go on all night between the three of us, but I think that's it from the audience.
Hey, Mike, I know you do a lot of speaking. Where can people find your books?
Yeah, sure.
Where can they find how to engage you as a speaker? Where do we find?
Thanks. So I appreciate it. Thanks for mentioning that, Bob. Probably the best place to get a hold of me for all that stuff is MikeMassimino.com, my website. And if you're interested in having me speak somewhere, there's a speaker. You can you can tap on speaker or contact. Or if there's a media thing, you can do that. There's information about my book there. And then on Twitter, I'm Astro. I still do the Twitter thing from that I started when I was in space, but it's at Astro_Mike on Instagram. Astro Mike Massimino. I'm also active on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook account, all that stuff. So yeah, so that's how you can find me. I appreciate you mentioning that, Bob.
Hey, Mike, listen, I already tweeted at you. I already Instagrammed at you.
Thanks.
Great honor if you followed back. I love this. This interview is in the making for a long time. We were so excited to have you. We really appreciate your time. Justin, as we close the show, can you just tell people how they can find the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America? And by the way, we should say Mike was the recipient of the highest award of the Order of Sons and Daughters of Italy.
Right.
15 years ago, the Marconi Award. So Justin, how do people find us?
Absolutely. So everyone should see on their screen the handles for our social media. So it's Sons of Italy. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. If you're interested in becoming a member, just go ahead and go to www.osia.org. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email us at nationaloffice@osia.org.
Awesome.
Great.
That launch was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll conclude our show. Thanks again, Mike. Everybody.
Thank you, Bob. I enjoy watching you on the news. I look for you this week too. And thanks to everyone. Thank you, Clarissa.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to everyone who hung in there to watch this thing. And thanks to the Sons of Italy. When you said I was a recipient, I thought you were going to say of that scholarship The Sons of Italy helped send me to college. I got a scholarship from the America Lodge in Franklin Square when I was an undergraduate. So that's what I thought you were going to mention. But that big one from a few years ago, that was pretty cool. So thanks for that too.
Awesome, Mike.
Fantastic. Well, good night, everybody.
Yeah, and good